within environment, energy, and clean tech. You may know the Canadian biotech company BioNB. Well, we've been doing BioNB's communications, marketing, and media for the last 2.5 years, and I'm the lead consultant on that account. And some of what I have to tell you today about networking at events comes from a number of events that we have done for BioNB. And I'm also very proud to be an ambassador for 1% for the Planet. See the logo down there in the bottom right of the screen. As a company, we're also a member of 1% for the Planet, which means that we donate 1% of our sales, not our profits, to environmental non-profits. That's also something I'd love to talk to you about after today, should you have any questions. So if you'd like to reach me, I'm at ks@sustainabilityconsult.com. I'd really like to thank BioAtlantic for bringing us all together today, giving me this opportunity to share with you my experience on networking and doing communications at conferences and events. This is your time. We have an hour and a half. We will be taking questions at the end. The plan is that I will speak for roughly 45 minutes, and afterwards I will take your questions. Now, if a question comes to you during the presentation, you can send it through on the chat. Just address it to the organizer only, and my colleague Anna will select those questions, read them out at the end, and hopefully we'll be able to stimulate some good discussion at the end. The recording of this webinar will be made available to you, and if you'd like to receive the slides, you can email me at ks@sustainabilityconsult.com. I think of myself as something of a pro when it comes to trade shows. For the last 10 years, I've been representing clients in a range of sectors at trade shows and conferences. Everything from doing media relations on site to designing a full exhibition stand and being present on the stand, and also helping with presentations and sponsorship and advertising. So I have been running around trade shows for many years, and I've clocked up many miles of running around trade shows. More recently, we've also started as Sustainability Consult, having a booth at trade shows, and you see us here, or you see me here at the Bio World Congress in Montreal in June. Just very briefly, Sustainability Consult is a sustainability, communications, and media consultancy. We offer a range of services, including events and training, like we're combining here today, media, issues management, social media, and so on. We're an international team. We're based in Brussels, and we operate internationally. And we do everything that you would expect a communications consultancy to do, but we do it around sustainability-related issues. And that's why we're so active in the bioeconomy. So essentially, sustainability is our passion, and communications is our tool to implement that passion. We work across a range of sectors, including chemicals and plastics, and materials and clean tech. And we have a number of clients. These are some of our clients. Now, I'm not here to talk all about us. I really want to move already into the meat of the presentation. Should you have any questions about Sustainability Consult, please don't hesitate to contact me afterwards. Now, we're here today to talk about networking, making the most out of conferences. And first of all, I'd like to just take a very small step back and to look at the rationale for communicating. Because I know that very often, if you're working in a laboratory or a university or research center, you may not feel that it's necessary to go out externally and talk about what it is you're doing. So we've come up with 5 rationales for you to look outside the lab. Now, this won't apply to everybody on the call, but I hope the justification for communications will apply to everyone. Our first reason is that communications are important because they help inform the public and the policymaker. And the policymaker is certainly very important because they are shaping the funding policy, they are setting up the organizations like BioAtlantic that can help bring people together today, and they are hopefully shaping a supportive policy framework for emerging industries like the bioeconomy. And certainly in Europe, the bioeconomy has become quite a hot topic over the last year or two. Communications on science-based issues inspire critical thinking and public debate, and they also help deal with some of the misinformation that we may see from time to time appearing in the media. Now, some of that misinformation in the media is a result of spin, and it's misinformed on purpose or misled on purpose. But much of it is actually because science is so complex and the journalist is most likely not a PhD scientist in that particular discipline and so hasn't completely understood. And this is where we really need scientists to come out and communicate and tell the story and help to correct that misinformation. Communications also clarifies what science is all about. And as it's such a dynamic area which is constantly evolving, it's important to communicate just to help everyone else keep up with what's going on in the field. And it's also a very nice way to thank your funders, whether that's the taxpayer or industry partners. So essentially, science communications help to disseminate results. And I've seen very often working with scientists that they'll make an announcement at the beginning of a project. So the project is starting, we've received funding, but not at the end. There's often a reluctance to communicate on results, which is always a puzzle to me as a former journalist and consultant. Communications educate, they raise awareness, they help build community, and they also help with the long-term sustainability of your projects because they will help with funding. So that's the why. Why would we communicate? And onto the how. Obviously, to communicate, we need messages. And breaking down complex scientific concepts is extremely difficult, but extremely important. And that's why companies like ours often specialize in science communications, because it's a difficult and complex area. We need to break down these ideas into bite-sized pieces that people can understand. But what people are we talking about? Who are we trying to reach? Essentially, our audiences and stakeholders for science-based communications and for the bioeconomy include funders and investors, policymakers who, as I've already mentioned, are important for creating that supportive framework, potential partners, the media, and the local community, which is one which is often overlooked. The local community is essential because effectively they are the ones giving us the license to operate. We have all these different audiences, and while you'll have a set of overarching messages, the messages need to be targeted to the different groups. You need to give a different message to a local school or a local council group than you would to an investment bank or to an industrial partner. So the messages must be targeted. We tailor the information to the level of understanding and knowledge, but also their interest. I mean, some companies will go to the banks trying to raise funding and they blind them with science, and the bank isn't interested. The bank is only interested in very basic information and the bottom line. So we need to tailor, always through communications. Spell out the basics. This sounds really obvious, but when you're so ingrained in your subject and it comes so naturally to you, it can be very difficult to break these complicated ideas down into bite-sized pieces that a generalist can understand. And one way to try to do that is really to keep the ideas simple, but to limit the jargon. I actually found myself yesterday explaining to somebody what a webinar was. So we're all in our own worlds, we've all got our own jargon, and we need to try to break that down and make it understandable for people. One way that we recommend to do this, and this is something that we normally do with our clients, is to develop a key messages document. Now, key messages is a one-page usually with 4 or 5 key messages of not more than 1 or 2 sentences each. It's not a paragraph each. We want to have a key messages document as a reference document that will help people remember what the messages are and keep them on message, so ensuring that messaging is consistent. And then a Q&A document is developed, and that's a longer document, and that's used to test the messages. When we do those, we come together with all our different backgrounds, scientists and policy people and communicators and journalists, and we develop the Q&A by asking all the difficult questions that our client may encounter. But you can do that internally. You don't need to work with a consultancy. You can do your own key messages and Q&A document. And I would recommend doing that before going to any important events. Once you've developed your messages, you need to get them out there. And different ways of spreading messages, but today increasingly important to use visuals, infographics, and video. And we're aiming to let the information go viral. And that means using these tools to create information tools which are creative, which are easy to understand, and which basically, when I post that to my Twitter or Facebook, someone else will repost it, and so on. And in that way, it goes viral. In terms of the voice that you use when communicating on these issues, it's important to be direct and to engage with the audience. And we recommend using multiple complementary channels like social media and traditional media to ensure that you reach a wider audience. So now on to the nitty-gritty of the presentation, networking at events, putting it out there, as we'd like to call it. Now, why should you bother to network at events? Surely you've just gone to an event to learn and to listen, but it's essential that you network. No matter how good social media is, webinars and conference calls are, networking face-to-face is still the best means of making connections. And to go to a trade event or a conference and to not make connections seems to me like a waste of time. So networking at events will help increase the opportunities for cooperation. It will raise your profile. You can raise your profile well, or it can raise your profile badly. So I hope that the tips I'm giving today will help you and will help you to raise your profile in a good way. And it also helps you to publicize your achievements. The bottom line, very often scientists are concerned that by making their messages simpler is effectively dumbing them down. But to communicate, the goal of communication is understanding. And so sometimes we do have to dumb down the messages a little bit and break them down in a way that people can understand. So I urge you to get out of the comfort zone, to go to BioMarine or whichever important event that you're going to soon, and to really connect with people. And in a moment, I'm going to try to show you how to do that. And I'd like to go back to the old adage of, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And to my mind, and I've done a lot of trade shows, success really comes from sharing and building community. And I would say that's especially important for small businesses like ours. So we're very lucky today. Many big trade shows have their own partnering tools. These tools allow us to see who is attending the conference and allows us to connect to them and invite them to connect with us. So here you can see the screenshot of the BioMarine Business Convention partnering tool. And you can send messages and you can schedule. And those are the two areas on the top toolbar, which we've circled in orange. There's also a mobile version, so you can check your calendar on the move. Now, how to use a partnering tool? Well, first of all, I would encourage you to write a really engaging profile, something that stands out. I think still today, not everybody is using the partnering system. So they might receive the email requests, but they're not actively going on and creating a profile. If you create a profile which stands out, even if the contact has not heard of you or your organization, an engaging profile will make them much more likely to agree to give you a few minutes over coffee. And you can focus on your strengths, your research, your business, etc. I would urge you to treat the partnering tool a bit like email and log in regularly and be active. There's no point creating the partnering profile and then not checking it again until you get to the conference. So check it at least twice a day, be active, reply to all the messages that you receive. And if you don't want to meet somebody, still reply and just say that unfortunately this year you won't have the time. Your calendar is all booked up. And you need to personalize the messages. Don't send a "Dear Sir, I would like to meet with you" message. Personalize everything. You wouldn't like to be spammed, so try not to spam your peers. Now, I know that Biomarine is next week, but we can use this guide for future shows. So I would encourage you to update your profile as soon as the partnering system becomes available. And then a week or two before the conference, send your meeting request or your request to meet for coffee, or just to say hello to some contacts that you already know. And then I would follow up 3 to 5 days before if you haven't heard. And it does no harm to confirm those meetings much closer to the time. When we were asked to help you with overcoming the challenges of networking, I've broken networking down into 3 phases: the before, the during, and the after. And the before is really important. It's in the before phase that we build the foundation for a successful event. So I've shown you the partnering tool and how to reach out to the contacts. You can also use the program and the partnering tool to identify the top targets. And if they're speakers, they'll be on the program. And you don't want to be one of these people who books a conference a few months ahead of time and then rolls up on the day and looks at the program. Every moment that you spend looking at the program or finding your way around while you're at the conference is a moment wasted. It's a moment that you could have been networking and telling your story and helping spread the word about what you do. So read the program before, get to know the program before and the speakers, decide which sessions you're going to. If you need to talk to your colleagues and split the sessions between you, do that in the office before you get to the show. Don't waste valuable time at the show looking at the program. Also beforehand, you're going to be developing any sales tools that you take with you. It's quite handy to have a sales pack, even if it's something quite simple, to help explain what you do, your organization, your company does. And obviously any tools or anything that needs to be printed will take a month or 2 to prepare, so that needs to be done before. And then closer to the time, use Twitter and make the most of the conference hashtag to connect with other people. I also always take a huge pile of business cards to a trade show, and I always bring some home. But the amount of times I've met somebody interesting and they've said, I don't have a business card, I've run out of business cards, this is my last business card. To me, that is not professional. So take a few hundred business cards and bring home what you don't use. Now, during the event, that's obviously the most important time. So you want to make it count. You've done your preparation, you've laid your foundations, and you're ready to go. My advice is strike early. Go as soon as the registration desk opens and register. Don't be stuck in a queue and miss half an hour or an hour of the actual event. And once the event opens, once the exhibition hall opens, get straight in there and go around the exhibition hall. I have been on many exhibition booths for Sustainability Consult, for clients, and I can tell you that on the first morning of the exhibition, first thing, there's always a slight air of nervousness in the hall because nobody knows if it's going to be a good show. You're sitting or standing on your booth and you're hoping that people will come to you and you're hoping that they will want to hear your story. So the first few people who come around on that first morning get more time, more care and more attention. So why not be one of those first people and go around there as an early bird and introduce yourself, get the information, ask the questions. So go early and go around the exhibition hall. Most likely you've come to the conference to attend the sessions, and that's basically why you're there. You can ask questions at the end. Don't recommend that you ask questions every time, and we certainly don't recommend that you be one of those people who asks a very long and rambling question or comment, the kind of question where the moderator says, where's the question in that? Want to avoid that. That raises your profile for the wrong reasons. But if it's a session where you're particularly knowledgeable or interested, then you can ask a short, succinct and clever question that will get you noticed for the right reasons. Speak to the speakers at the end, but if you've ever been a speaker, you'll know what it's like to be stampeded at the end by people. So if it's relevant, speak, but don't monopolize the speaker. You know, exchange cards, ask a quick question and agree to follow up. And I'd like to challenge you to get out of the comfort zone. If you go to a conference or an event with a group of people that you know, it's very easy to stay with them. So try to speak to someone new in every break, every lunch, every opportunity. I would like you to speak to new people, but I don't want you to get stuck with new people. So no one expects during the coffee break to be standing talking to the same person for 15 minutes. So you have to know when to move on. And it's quite okay, there is no shame to move on. There are a number of polite ways of doing it, and a few to fall back on are the excuse me, I need to get a coffee, or excuse me, I must catch my colleague over there. Or my favourite actually is very honest, very open. It's great to meet you, have a good show. If you can introduce people, even if you've just met them. That's also a very easy way to exit the networking. So you introduce two people and you walk away. But I also try not to leave people standing on their own. It can be quite painful if you don't enjoy networking and you're standing by yourself. So you can use the approach I just described, introduce them to somebody and then move on. If you've made appointments with the partnering system, don't let the person down. Keep the appointment, and if for some reason you can't, do let them know. And a trade show is just the best opportunity to connect with people. And if you can be friendly and open and engaging, you will have a successful show. We talked about different audiences and tailoring the information to different audiences. And again, this is where you need to pick the right level of information for your audience. And I have a very practical point for you, but as I said, I've been doing trade shows for 10 years, and so I've learned this over time. Wear comfortable shoes. Now this sounds a bit silly, but if you're in uncomfortable shoes or if you're in sky-high heels, you're not going to be able to do the miles that you need to do. And to do a trade show successfully, you need to really walk the floor many, many times. So make yourselves comfortable. Stock up on some sleep before you go, because you want to be able to go to all of the networking. And if the networking continues to drinks in the bar, then that is a continuation of networking and you want to be able to do it. And the after phase of the networking is also extremely important. Many times when I've been to a show, the same day or the next day, I've had the follow-up email from the contact. And that is basically how things are done these days. If I receive the follow-up 1 month after, I'm going to think that that organization or that person is quite unprofessional. So on the same day that you meet the person, most conferences now have wireless internet, or you can do it when you get home or back to your room. Send a LinkedIn request to connect to the person. And if you're on Twitter, follow them on Twitter right away. And then the same day or the next day, send a personalized email to follow up. And you're basically inviting further contact, whether it's a meeting, a phone call, or joining a forum, or whatever. Now you can prepare those emails before you go, and you can just tailor them on the day according to the person that you met. And within a week or two after the show, you really want to have those meetings and calls in the calendar and hopefully already well underway. This sounds really obvious, but it's something that is often overlooked. If you've met people at a conference, you need to keep track of those contacts. They might have a better memory than you. And when you meet them next time, you'll be very embarrassed if they say, oh yes, we discussed last year, or we discussed at the last conference. Of course, there are different ways of tracking contacts, and each person will have their own. But using a customer relationship management or CRM system like HighRise is very effective. And HighRise does have free packages for basic use. We also, if we are doing shows for clients, we scan all the business cards and all the contact forms. And that way you have a PDF file you can send to different clients in different locations. And if you have a mailing list, you might want to add the contacts to your mailing list to keep them updated. And then the really crucial bit for the long-term sustainability of your business is converting these contacts into contracts. We've all been to conferences where we've had a fantastic time, met great people, but then how do we convert that into business? And it's very important to do the follow-up. So we've talked about the different kinds of follow-up. Sending a thank you email after meetings and this kind of thing. Setting a clear structure, date and time, and sending a confirmation. But then in some cases, the contact might be interested, but they're not willing right now, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the budget to do what it is you're offering right now. So you want to keep in touch with them, but you don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to oversell. So my advice is really to keep in touch, but to keep in touch in a smart way. So not to bug them with a phone call every week or even every month, but to use your reading and use your information to send them from time to time an information, an article, a blog post, some news about funding or policy developments that can be useful to them. And that way you can become a resource of information for them. And then they will keep you in mind, but not in the way that there's an irritating salesperson pestering me, but in that guy that I met at the conference is really useful. He's been sending me things. I have a question, why don't I call him? Anything that keeps the channel of communication open. And you should always tailor and personalize those messages. So you're always going to use the person's name. You're not going to send a dear sir type of email. You want to keep the momentum going in a professional and engaging and helpful way. You don't want to be a pest. Something else you can do to increase your impact from the event and to leverage the event is PR, media relations. Now, if you have an external communications and PR agency like Sustainability Consult, this is something where they can help you. But if you're going it alone, I would like to give you some tips today that show you how to leverage an event for the media by yourselves without needing to bring in external support. So we already talked about key messages, and these are very important for the media. So you're going to have tailored messages for the media. You can contact the conference organizers, and you can ask for the list of journalists that have registered. I must warn you, this isn't always available, and in North America, it tends not to be for data protection reasons. However, you do have ways of finding out which journalists are attending the event, because firstly, you have the partnering system. Most journalists, if they register ahead of time, will be listed on the partnering system. And sometimes you can search specifically for press in the partnering system. You can also check the official media partners. Now, this is publicly available information. It's on the website, it's on the brochure. The media partners will very often have a journalist or two at the event, although not always. And you'll have your own contacts too. So taking all of these contacts, you can then email or call ahead of time to offer an informal press briefing. And if your CEO or CTO is going to be there, even better. Prepare some information in a press pack, and that can either be a folder that you carry around a few copies of, or some USB sticks that you can give to journalists with your basic information. If anyone has questions on what should be in a press pack, I can take those at the end. And then on the day, if you have some news, try to coincide with your participation at the event to launch it, because then it becomes news that's launched at the event, not just news that no one sees, and then the following week you go to an event. If you're speaking at the conference, you can put that into a press release. You can offer your presentation to journalists, see if they're interested enough to do a follow-up article or interview. And at the show, you know that everyone has different badges. And there are stickers, there are different ways of showing which kind of participant it is. And the press badges are always identified separately. So when you get your badge and you register, just ask the person checking you in, what do the press badges look like this year? And you can keep an eye out then. Now, I'm a PR professional, not a PR stalker, but I do always look out for the press badges at a show. And you can guarantee that if a journalist comes by me, I'm going to stop them, even if I just take a couple of minutes of their time. I'm going to introduce myself, introduce my clients, exchange details, and then make sure afterwards I follow up with them and I add them to the press list. It's very similar to how we deal with other contacts. Excuse me. We can also use social media to leverage the event. Excuse me. And I particularly point to Twitter for this. Twitter is very effective for events. Social media will help leverage further the participation, will help us to position and influence your organization and your own participation. This, like all the other preparation, should start before the event. So you should start communicating and interacting before. And it is surprising today how few people tweet before an event. They all swing into action when they get there, but very few people even tweet something as simple as, I'm going to BioNB on Monday, looking forward to seeing you there, and this kind of thing. You can also post live tweets from the more important sessions, and you can interact with other people who are busy on Twitter. So when you're at the conference, you'll see some people are really leading the way on Twitter, and they're tweeting the most about the event. Well, many times I've now arranged to meet people for a coffee based on the fact that both they and I were very active on Twitter from the sessions. And it's always been good, it's always been interesting. Some influencers will appear, and if you're not so confident on Twitter, you can retweet them. There's still a good chance that they'll follow you if you do that. You don't need to retweet everything that they do, but just some of the best posts. You can use Twitter to invite people to your presentation, or if you're exhibiting, to come by your booth and say hi. And the goal of social media is to build community. What better place to do that at than an event? And you can also use Twitter for follow-up after the event. We're lucky with BioNB because you see on the top right-hand side of the web page, they already have a number of social media platforms. They're on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. And below you see some of the screenshots from those different platforms. So there's nothing stopping you from engaging right away, and I do recommend focusing on Twitter. So finally, when you go to an event, you're making an investment. It's an investment of your time, an investment of budget. So I hope that the tips I've shared today will help you make the most of that investment, and I'll be taking questions at the end should you have any. I would recommend that you clear your diary. Now by this, I mean you're putting on your out of office to say, I am out of the office at an event. I will get back to you when I return to the office. Too many people go to a trade show or a conference and they try to continue their day job. We've all seen them sitting in the conference presentation on their BlackBerry or their laptop, trying to continue their regular work. And in my view, neither the conference nor the regular work gets their full engagement. So I feel that that's a lose-lose situation. If you can possibly clear your diary, you will make the most of your investment. I think we should never forget to smile. And if you're the smiley, open person at a conference or trade show, people will come to you because you look approachable, you don't look scary, they can stand and drink their coffee with you, and things will lead to other good things if you smile and you're open and genuine. And something that's becoming more and more important today, especially in communications, is to talk about the why as well as the what. Now, what do I mean by that? My what is, I'm Kathryn Sheridan. I'm a sustainability communications consultant. But my why is, I'm Kathryn Sheridan. I'm passionate about sustainability, and I work as a sustainability communications consultant. The why is the context. It's how you fit into the big picture. And that's becoming increasingly important when you're making contact with people. I just want to quickly mention the startup package that we're offering to BioAtlantic and companies and organizations connected with BioAtlantic. It is a limited offer, and if you have any questions or you'd like to receive this flyer that you see on the right, please email me at ks@sustainabilityconsult.com. Basically, the package is for organizations who don't really have their communications up and running yet. So rather than coming to us for communications or media advice, they really need a package just to get themselves launched so they can go out to these events and have professional looking materials. So it includes a logo, a 4-page website, key messages and Q&A documents, 1 press release and press clippings. And we're doing that at the special price of 8,000 Canadian dollars until the end of October. So please do contact me if you'd like more information on that. I think now we have time for questions. I've actually managed to do that right on time, 45 minutes. So we have 45 minutes now if there are any questions. I expect that some people have already sent questions through to my colleague Anna, and she's going to read out some of those questions for me to try to answer. So please don't hold back. This really is your time, and we're here to help in any way we can. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you very much for this presentation. I hope you have all enjoyed. We have a few questions here from Jennifer, the first one. Could you provide more examples of how to badly raise your profile? So basically, can you give some examples of things that you shouldn't do?
Yeah, what not to do.
Exactly.
But I mentioned the long and winding road of comments. You know, you quite often you're in a conference session and somebody just whitters on, and basically they're just trying to promote themselves and they don't have anything to add, and that's just extremely annoying. So that is one thing. Not behaving well. What does that mean? It could be anything from being rude to people in the reception, getting drunk in the reception, or at least not too drunk in the reception, pretending that you know everything when in fact you're there to learn. It's basic good behavior. If you behave badly, you're not going to raise your profile well. If you try to monopolize the speakers at the end, if you try to monopolize the Twitter feed, but you have nothing to add, then those are all ways to badly raise your profile. But I hope with the information that I've given today, and the fact that Canadians are renowned for their good manners, that no one is going to badly raise their profile at BioNB.
Okay, another question, and okay, this is about industry. So whose job is it to tackle misinformation? And what is the best way to address emotionally charged arguments?
So whose job is it to tackle misinformation and how to address emotional arguments?
Exactly, thank you.
Okay. And who does that come from?
Jennifer as well.
Okay, thanks Jennifer for the questions. It's great to get us kicked off. I hope that everyone else is going to be scribbling down some questions. Whose job is it to tackle misinformation? I think it really depends where it's coming from and in what context. And in a way, that's kind of a broader policy communications question, I would say. There is misinformation in the media, but there's also a lot of lobbying going on towards policymakers and towards the media. We're based in Brussels, which is the heart of European lobbying. So what we tend to see is that journalists, and I was an environment journalist, are contacted by both sides of a debate, and they will try to feed information to the media, just like they do to policymakers in their lobbying and their advocacy work. As a journalist, your job is to pick your way through that information, and you should go and look for additional sources. So let's say, an example, government wants to regulate against substance X. As a good journalist, you would go to the manufacturers of that substance. You would get their view and their comment. You would then go to the pressure groups, so Greenpeace, for example, or WWF, and you would get their view. And you would continue going through relevant stakeholders to ask for their opinion on the particular issue. And from that point, you would craft your article. Now, I'm talking really old school journalism. I'm not that old, but I was well trained. So that is how journalism used to be done. The problem these days that we're seeing, and it's making it much harder to do PR actually, is that journalists really don't have any time anymore. What's happening is companies are not spending the money on advertising. And so that's directly impacting the editorial teams. They don't have the time to chase the stories, and they don't have the time to check all of the sources. So we're seeing a lot more coverage which is not balanced. And if you see a negative article where you think there's misinformation, the first thing to do is to check through and see, is it balanced? Have they gone to different sides, or is it just the industry side, or is it just the NGO side? And if you want to then try to tackle that, say something has appeared in print, you're not happy, you don't think it's balanced, and you do have a viewpoint, or one of your companies does have a view on it, you then work with the publication to try to publish a follow-up piece or a letter to the editor where you try to balance the debate. That's the how to tackle misinformation. We can also be much more proactive than that and make sure that organizations like yours and companies like yours are putting the right information out at shows and through the media. That's one of the main reasons to do communications. But whose job is it? That's Jennifer's question. And I think it really depends on the issue. There are a number of people whose jobs it is. It can be the industry themselves. It's really up to industry to communicate clearly on the issues. But the policymaker will also be communicating their viewpoint, and the pressure groups the same. So in a way, there's always going to be quite a bit of noise around these issues. But if you're directly impacted by misinformation, then you need to follow up with the media if it's appeared in the media or whichever other channel it has appeared in. You know, if misinformation is on Twitter, you can engage directly with the person who wrote it. The same with a blog. And you know, if you have your arguments ready, if you have your ducks in a row, as it were, you can go to them and explain. They might not agree. You might never get them to agree, but you can at least show that there is science, that there is information that shows that there's another viewpoint. Now, how to address emotionally charged arguments? I'm obviously thinking of climate change here as an example, and there are different viewpoints around. When we do media training, we really advise people to stick to the facts, not to get emotionally involved with the discussion, but to be very factual, set out your position, and that's the same if you're being attacked in the media or if you are working on a difficult issue where there's a great diversity of views. So you keep calm, you stick to the facts. If you've got the science, you stick to the science. I hope that helps. Is there any follow-up question on that? That's quite a long answer.
Thank you, Kathryn. There's no follow-up question yet, but there's a comment from Kevin. He would like you to give your view on a particular issue when you are introducing yourself at a show and you're raising your profile. He says that perhaps people should not slam other technologies to promote yours as better. Can you give your view on that? Thank you.
I think that's a really valid point, because we do see at all of these bio-based shows that everybody's acting against each other, and they're all saying, oh, our technology's better. Oh, we use bacteria. No, we use yeast. Oh, we do it like this. We use sugars. We use different feedstocks. Our feedstocks are renewable. Everybody in marketing is trying to show their selling points. Their key messages will bring out those selling points. But I think Kevin is absolutely right. We shouldn't be slamming other technologies. I think all we should be doing is really presenting our technology. So you're there, you're presenting your technology, and you're presenting clearly the advantages. But you don't need to go down the competitive marketing route, which says, my technology is better than yours. Now, if you want to do that, you need to show statistics. You've really got to have the data and be ready for the other technology to come back against you. What we do quite a lot of in Europe is working with trade associations. And when we're talking about spreading messages or addressing emotionally charged arguments, often the trade organization is the best organization to address those issues. So like the Canadian Chemical Society, for example, we work with organizations like that as well as companies, and they can really be the right place to start to address these issues. But Kevin, I totally agree. We shouldn't be slamming other technologies.
Thank you.
And Kevin, feel free to come back if there's anything else.
Thank you, Kathryn. I also have a question.
Yes.
When we are communicating, and especially when we are using social media, isn't there a risk to simplify too much our message? And will we still be able to attract a more technical audience?
Well, I'm hearing this from you, who's our in-house scientist with a PhD, so we may have different views on this, but I talked earlier on about having to simplify the messages and the key messages, and I think we do need to simplify. That doesn't necessarily mean dumbing down, but in some cases it may. We can't, stay in the world of scientific jargon and expect that a journalist or a banker is going to understand. And I've seen this with some companies when they're going to the banks with highly technical information, and the bank doesn't care. They want the bottom line. It's too much information. They're not interested. So we talked before about tailoring the messages. Define the audience, tailor the message. And so you can still be technical to the technical audience, and that would be your targeted message to that audience. But to a more general audience, your message needs to be more general. And so on social media, which audience are we aiming at? Well, unless it's a very clearly, a science-based stream on social media, I think we need to be quite general. And I think if the messages are strong, we don't risk losing the message, and I don't think we risk simplifying too much. All you're doing is putting yourself out there with key messages and saying, we're here, we're open, we're engaging, we're on social media. You can come to us for more information. And on the website, I'm sure there will be some more technical information. But for social media, keep it more generalist so that people can understand.
Thank you. There's also another question from Jennifer. This one is about Twitter. So Jennifer asks, how important is it to learn how to take advantage of Twitter? And she also asks, if someone is not familiar with Twitter, should they still sign up?
Okay, they're good questions. So how important is Twitter? So how important is it to learn to use Twitter? And if you're not familiar, should you still sign up? Well, there was a time when I didn't know how to make a cake, but I learned how to make a cake, and now I'm a pretty good cake baker. So at some point, we always have to learn. At some point, we have to get on the horse and learn. So I think if you're not familiar with Twitter, either get some training from someone who is, or basically figure it out for yourself. It is extremely easy. There really is no rocket science behind Twitter. I know that there's a lot of concern and skepticism still around about social media and how useful it is, but I can almost guarantee that once you start using Twitter on a regular basis, you're going to find it useful. So it is important. It is important, and it isn't difficult. I think those would be my two key messages. You can go home this evening, sign up for Twitter, play around with it, and pretty much know what you're doing. Of course, there are some tricks that you can learn through training, but you can learn the basics just by yourself very easily. When you're doing a big show like BioMarine, it's also a good way of seeing what's going on at the show. There will be a lot of people posting things on Twitter. If there are things going on, you can see where the excitement is by the issues that are trending. So I'd say it's very important to take advantage. You can do it yourself. Your communications people can do it. We have Twitter packages that we do for people where we set up their Twitter and then we run their Twitter with 2 or 3 tweets a day, for example. If you're really not comfortable, but you think it's important for your organization, you can outsource it. But I think that it's something that you can probably, if we're talking about small businesses and organizations, you can also do it yourselves. I hope that helps. I know there's a lot of concern about it, but I would just say get in there and give it a try.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if anybody else has questions, but if you do, just
we still have
please
some time.
Yes, please send a message to me. I'm the organizer. But in the meantime, Kathryn, just could you quickly tell us what goes inside the press pack? You mentioned that, and maybe you could just share some ideas with us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it can be any number of things, but if you want to do a basic press pack, I would take a cardboard folder and I would clip a business card to the folder of the person that you want to have contacted if media has questions. So a business card, you can just staple that onto the folder, and then in the folder you will put any recent press releases. If you don't have any press releases, that's okay, but if you do, I would put the last 2 or 3 press releases in the folder. And then I would write a couple of one-page documents. And what I would normally do is one very simple one that's a media contact form. Now, in a way, you've got the business card, so you could say that that's superfluous. But we do write a one-pager, just a Word document that says media contact for interview requests and questions. Please contact, Kathryn Sheridan, Sustainability Consult, and the contact details and so on. And then the second more important one-page document is what we call a press backgrounder. Now, the press backgrounder sets out everything that you want to share about the company, but it should only be a one-pager. So in that one-pager, just one side of A4, you're going to write the basics about the company. And it would be, Sustainability Consult is a communications and public relations consultancy specialized in sustainability, and so on. It's very short, but that tells journalists what they need to know about the company. And then should you have any brochures or other tools, you can include those in the press pack as well. So it's really very simple. It won't take long to put together, but you can carry a few around with you, and then if you meet a journalist, at least you're well prepared and you can offer the press pack to them. Increasingly, we are doing press packs on USB sticks, but the same approach would apply. So if you have a branded USB stick that you can use, you can just load those documents onto the USB stick, give that to the journalist with your business card. And obviously, you're going to try to take the journalist's card as well. They're not always forthcoming with business cards. Sometimes you have to ask. But if you would like to follow up with the journalist, you're obviously going to need their details to put into your press list. Another thing you can do, sometimes you manage to do, is when you get to the show, you go and see where the press room is. And sometimes the person who is running the press room will let you in, even if you don't have a press badge. And this is a really important tip. So if you can get into the press room, either because there's nobody on the door or because they will let you in, you can go and leave some of your press packs in the press room, and invariably companies will be leaving their press packs in there. So a journalist, when they're bored, they're waiting for a press conference, they'll have a flick through the materials that are available in the press room. So that's another thing to remember, is to try to get your press kit into the press room. That's a good question. Thank you, Anna. Can we encourage some more participants to come forward with some questions?
Yes. We have also a question from Jennifer, asking if you would suggest putting the key messages and the Q&A documents in the press pack.
Oh, that's a very good question, and the answer is absolutely not. For me, the key messages and Q&A document are internal documents, and they should not go into the press pack. There's a basic rule in communications, which is we never talk about our strategy. And in that same vein, we would not put the key messages document into a press pack, because then you're saying to the world, these are our messages. Of course, your messages should come through in all of the work that you do. They should underpin all of your communications. So if you have a brochure, it would be easy to see the key messages, but you wouldn't put the key messages sheet in there. The Q&A you wouldn't put in either, because the Q&As that we do are internal only. They're highly confidential, and it's in these Q&As where you ask all the difficult questions. So you put the journalist's hat on or the Greenpeace hat on, and you ask the difficult questions. However, you do raise an excellent point, Jennifer, because it can be quite useful to have a kind of Q&A document for the press pack. And if you want to do that, I would just take some of the more basic and less controversial questions from the Q&A, and I would make a frequently asked questions. I would make an FAQ document, and that way there shouldn't be any confusion internally. The Q&A is marked up as highly confidential and internal only, and the FAQ is for the external audience and for the press.
Thank you. Now, concerning promotional items at conferences, just like pens, Jennifer also asks if they are effective and what would you suggest that is best to bring?
I think my first question, coming back on that, is how sustainable is it? Because we go to these shows and we walk around and there is lots and lots of free stuff. And many of us pick up the free stuff, but do we use it again? My take on promotional materials is, if you're going to do them, they should actually be really, really good. They should be good quality, they're going to cost quite a bit, and it's something that people will use. I think, you know, the pens and the key rings these days, people are just not interested in. The luggage tags that, I mean, I've had so much junk over the years, and I used to pick it all up because I would keep it in a big box marked branding. So when clients came in and said we want to do some tools, I could open up my big magic box of junk. But at the end of the day, it is just rubbish. So I think you really want to find something that's quality. At the moment, I'm quite excited by some of the more sort of environmentally friendly tools. You're still giving things away. They still may end up being thrown away, and they're probably still made in China. So there are some criteria to really try to take into account. But companies are certainly springing up now that are offering more sustainable gifts and gadgets to give away at shows. And it might even be a pen, but it's a pen that's made from recycled plastic or recovered materials. There are some nice mouse mats that you can get from old car tires, this kind of thing. I still quite like bags, although I think the events community is becoming slightly divided on bags and how sustainable they are. I mean, you'll know yourselves if you keep the bag or not. But I think a good bag, when people travel a lot, it can be quite useful. But we're looking more and more for useful gifts, and those are therefore more expensive. And then you have to see, do you put it on the booth so everyone can take one? You know, something like an umbrella. We live in Belgium. It rains all the time in Belgium. At some point, I would like to do some really nice golf umbrellas with the Sustainability Consult logo on, give them out to our community and have them then walk around Brussels with the umbrella, because it's always raining, the umbrella up with the Sustainability Consult logo. I think that kind of thing is really valuable, but that's also a lot more expensive than the usual pen or giveaway. So it depends a bit on your budget, it depends who you're trying to reach, and how sustainable you want it to be. Does that help, Jennifer?
I think it did. We have now two very good questions. I'm going to start with the question from Kevin. Kevin asks if a booth is worth the money, or a B2B networking is as effective if you're trying to reduce costs, and what are the benefits of having a booth at a conference?
Okay, that's a really, really good question. So the benefits of having a booth at a conference are that you're seen, that you're present, and you're part of the exhibition. Now that sounds really obvious, but if you've been exhibiting in the past and you stop exhibiting, your competitors do notice if you're a company. And if you're a company trying to make a name for yourself quite quickly, a booth is a very effective way, because you will meet so many more people with the booth than you will just talking to people at the conference session or using the partnering tool to set up those B2B meetings. So I would say it depends a bit on the company. You also must have the staff. There is nothing worse than an empty booth. And I can perhaps provide some insight as well. I have my rules on how to manage a booth. I mean, a booth should never be empty. A booth should always be clean and tidy. You know yourself, when you see a booth and the brochures are all jumbled up and it just looks a mess, you just think, I couldn't work with those people, they're not professional. I have rules about eating and drinking and telephoning on a booth. If anybody's doing a booth with me, that's not allowed. So I'm quite strict, because I think it's really important that you project a very professional exterior and that you're always open. Many times we go to conferences and in the exhibition hall, there's the guy that I talked about who's trying to do his day job and he's trying to be on the booth. And he's looking down at his computer or at his BlackBerry the whole time. And you're not presenting that face to people that says, I'm open, I'm engaging. You might never have heard of me, but look, I look friendly, come and talk to me. So I do think there's value in having a booth. It does depend on a bit on where you are in terms of budget and in terms of your stage of business development. It is worthwhile only if you've got sufficient people to put on the booth, so that one of you can still have the full conference pass and go to the sessions, but you can still have one or two other people on the booth at all times. Is it worth the money? I believe so. And I mean, you saw the example early on of the Sustainability Consult booth. Bio in Montreal is the first time we've taken a full booth. And it was absolutely fantastic. We had this amazing stand made of cardboard. I mean, the booth just looked fantastic. It was all cardboard, right down to the tables and chairs, you can see on the picture. And we met a lot of people. Now, in the past, I've been to Bio with clients and by myself, and I've met people and I've had good contacts, but not as good as we had on the booth. So I can speak from first experience there. I think it might have helped that we had some really good Belgian chocolates on the booth. That certainly brought people in and made them listen to us while they were eating. If you don't have the money, though, if you don't have the budget for the booth, you go and you follow the tips that I've set out. Make the most of the B2B networking. Do really effective follow-up. If you're confident on Twitter, use Twitter before, during, and after to really exploit the event and to leverage your participation in the event. So in conclusion, if you have the budget, I would do it, absolutely. But if you're going to do it well. There are some really awful booths at these bio-based shows, some absolutely awful ones where you think, actually, even for just a tiny amount, I could have made this look so much better. So if you're going to do it professionally, make it look good. Use an agency if you've got the budget, or use a designer, but just get something professional and then be on it. Make it clear you're open for business and engage with people. If you don't have the budget, work the conference as best you can using the B2B system as we've shown, and you should still have some really good contacts.
Thank you. And another question, and this one comes from Thierry. Thierry asks, how can you postpone some questions on prices of your products, or some specific questions on your products characteristics for a second meeting? So you want first to introduce your product, and then in a second meeting you would like to talk about prices.
Yeah, I assume that there must be a sound business reason for that, because otherwise I would be always tempted to go with a sort of a complete marketing package, and so that you can talk pricing. But a way to do that, if you're not prepared to talk about pricing at that point, is to offer to share samples. If you're already at the stage where you've got samples, you can have that first meeting, tell them all about your product, offer to send them a sample, and then when they've tested the material, you can talk about budget. That's one way of doing it. Another way, would be, to be very straight and say, this is an introductory meeting. We would need you to sign an NDA before we talk about pricing. So that would be another way of doing it. And then you arrange to send over an NDA, and then you talk about pricing. It seems a bit radical maybe to say you've got to send an NDA before we talk about pricing, but in some companies' circumstances that might make sense.
Thank you, Kathryn. I think that's it. If anybody else has a question, just send it to me.
Does anybody have a question that's really
Yes.
specific to BioMarine? Because we're talking about shows in general. I just wonder if there's anything specific for BioMarine.
Well, I think there's no question.
Okay, well, I think that's been extremely interesting. I really appreciated the questions that we received, where they were excellent questions. I can be contacted at ks@sustainabilityconsult.com if anybody has further questions. There's quite a lot of information, quite a lot of resources on our website as well. That's sustainabilityconsult.com. And if you're on Twitter, or if you're planning to go home tonight and get yourself on Twitter, you can follow us at SustConsult, and I'm also at Kathryn Sheridan. So I would like to thank very much Jennifer and everyone at BioAtlantech for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. And I certainly hope that the session has been useful and that you have some tips you can take away and make your next event, whether it's BioMarine or another event, a huge success. So I wish you all the very best in the development of your businesses and your organizations, and look forward to having the opportunity to meet or speak again in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathryn, and thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.